No, it's just coffee. Grog. Greetings, denizens of the internet. This is Brian Carey. I am the Savvy Barbarian. Today I'm going to show you another campaign story starter. This is an idea that you can use to begin to launch your own homebrew story campaign in Dungeons & Dragons. And I like this one, especially the way that we're going to open it. I'm going to show you a neat trick that I can use to get people to naturally, through the course of the story, share information about their character. Lots of times when people play together in Dungeons & Dragons, the players are already friends with each other, but that doesn't mean they actually know what the other players are going to use as their characters. We don't actually know that the other guy's, the background of the other fellow's wizard. We don't know the background of the other lady's cleric. And getting them to sort of introduce that information to each other, that can be tricky. And honestly, the way that most dungeon masters do it, it makes it feel really awkward. Like, okay, you're in a tavern together now. You can talk with each other now. Hi, I'm a wizard, and I'm second level, and I've got I'm 7 feet tall, and I've got blue eyes, and I'm wearing yeah, that just goes badly every single time. So in this story starter, we're going to have one scene where, as part of the story, as part of the narrative, we're going to give those players a chance to tell us about their backgrounds, and that'll make the whole campaign a lot more interesting right out of the box. Stay tuned, and don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Brian Carey. I am the Savvy Barbarian. In this campaign, all your level 1 players wake up, and as they come to consciousness, they realize they're all in a jail cell. Steel vertical bars running floor to ceiling. As they look around the room is covered with storage crates and boxes, mostly supplies, food, odds and ends, junk. There are oil lamps on the wall. The walls are all made of wood. Soon they notice the whole room is starting to list off to one side, and then it rights itself, and the room starts to list off to the other side. They hear the creaking of wood, and very soon your players figure out they are on a ship. The last thing your players remember before they were shanghaied was they were in a tavern. They were toasting to the birthday of the serving wench, Gensilla. Back in the tavern, she had bright red hair, she wore heavy copper bracelets, and she bought them all a round of drinks. The next thing they know, they're waking up in a jail cell. Before your players get too settled, several guards burst into the room, along with a red-headed woman wearing copper bracelets. Gensilla is apparently the captain of the ship. She starts demanding answers from your players. Before we reach Isla Mortalis, each of you has a chance to plead whether or not you have value. So, if any of you has any wealthy relatives or patrons back home that you would like to appeal to, now's the time. If you don't tell me who you are, that's fine. You'll just end up digging in the mines in Isla Mortalis. You there, what's your name? Half-dwarf thing, whatever you are. What's your name? Tell me about yourself. Is there anything? Are you worth anything to anyone? And go ahead and lay it on thick. These people are going to be made to work in the mines if they don't tell you who they are and who they owe their allegiance to, who their bonds are to. It's a great opportunity for the players to, as part of the narrative, explain who their characters are. To be indignant, I'm not a half-dwarf. I'm an elf, and I do X, Y, and Z, and I owe my allegiance to, and they can start to explain their bonds. I've got a video, by the way, on personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws. I'll put that right there in a link in the cards if you want to have a look at that. But letting the players have a chance to explain their bonds and give that some value is a really neat thing, and it helps them dig into their backstory and teach the other players what their character has going for them. Once the players are done explaining their backgrounds and who they are and giving their names to Gensilla, the red-headed captain, takes everyone but one guard and leaves the brig area of the ship. The one guard left behind has a key ring full of keys and the ring he puts on his belt on his hip. He explains that if you keep quiet and let him get a little bit of sleep, he might actually let you have some food today. He puts his feet up on a crate and folds his hands over his chest and tries to get a little bit of shut-eye. Players can see the keys on the keyring right there on his belt. As the players look around the room, They can see there are crates, various cleaning supplies, a push broom right next to the jail cell, and they might pick up on that. It's one way they could use a broomstick to reach through the bars and pick the keys off of the sleeping guard. They could also use the mage hand cantrip to simply reach through the bars and swipe the keys off the guard. Also, they could probably just break through the bars if their warrior or barbarian has high enough strength, but make this a reasonably difficult difficulty class. Say 20, 22, something reasonably hard, so they can't just snap out of there easily. And only let somebody break out if they have the proficiency in athletics. Because it's no fun if the feeble wizard just accidentally rolls a 20 on his athletics check and their barbarian happened to roll a 1. It doesn't make the barbarian feel special or big and strong if the feeble wizard managed to break through the jail cell door when the barbarian couldn't. It ruins the story, and it doesn't help the players feel like they're actually contributing what they brought to the table. You can also let the players get out of the jail cell by loosening bolts on the floor that bolt the jail cell to the deck. Loose floorboards work. There's a number of other ways that you can let the players escape, but let them actually have that moment to escape from the jail cell, even though they don't have any weapons or armor on them just yet. The fact that they've actually escaped the jail cell gives them a couple of experience points and actually lets them have an accomplishment. Your players are probably going to take the guard hostage, and they might possibly try to kill him with his own sword or something, but before they get a chance to do that, the entire ship rocks violently to the side. The sailors up on deck start screaming that something's going terribly wrong, and you hear wood shattering. The mast is snapped. Something big has a hold of the ship. Players hear one of the sailors scream something about the bone kraken is attacking them. Before they can do anything else, the room they're in is rent in two. Water fills the entire area, and they float to the top, gasping for air, clawing through debris, and swimming for their lives. It's a good thing your players just got out of that jail cell. Now that your players are at the surface, they see indeed that some enormous skeletal creature is just tearing through the remains of the ship. Many of the sailors have drowned, but all 4 of your players are near one another, and they all latch on to a piece of debris, and they all try to paddle away as fast as they can from the continual destruction of the ship. And now it's time for a skill challenge. You see, they can see the island. They can see Isla Mortalis just ahead of them. It's not that far. It's within swimming distance, but there's a lot going on. There are other sailors, there's falling debris, there is, of course, the bone kraken, and who knows what else dangers lie in the water. Perhaps there's sharks, perhaps there's mermaids. So now it's time for that skill challenge. The skill challenge is something I first learned from another dungeon master. His name is Matt Colville. I'll put a link up here in the cards here so that you can have a look at his video. He explains it really, really well, and I think he's a wonderful dungeon master. Your skill challenge is going to be the users using their skills here and noting the ones that they're proficient at. If the players are proficient at a skill, they can use it. Again, if the player is not proficient at a skill, it kind of ruins it. If somebody, say, the Barbarian remembers a piece of magical lore and the wizard rolls a 1 when he does it, it doesn't make it very fun. So if you just give the people who are proficient at that skill the opportunity, the trick is don't let them use it more than 1 time. So we're going to use 5 successes in this case have to happen before they accrue 3 failures. They're going to roll against a difficulty class of 13. You can adjust this if you think something should be easier or harder. And if they make their 5 successes before they make their 3 failures, then they successfully navigate to Isla Mortalis. For example, maybe the cleric has nature proficiency, and she remembers that riptides can happen and that they need to swim parallel to the shore to escape the riptide so that they can keep making progress. Maybe the ranger uses his survival, and he remembers in his survival check, he recalls that there's a special way to escape the grasping seaweed that's threatening to entangle their legs. Maybe your fighter or barbarian uses his athletics check to see if he can pedal harder and faster and kick their way using the debris as a makeshift raft and guide the party to the shore. Let the players come up with their own ideas. There's plenty of these things, just don't let any one player repeat the same proficiency that they've used before. For example, once your barbarian has used his athletics check, that's it. He doesn't get to use it again. He has to use something else. Another player could also use athletics, but the same player can't use the same skill check more than 1 time. Otherwise, they would just pick the thing that they're really good at. Maybe they have a +6 at something, and they just are successful at it, roll the dice 5 times, and it's a win. And it doesn't really let the other players have an opportunity to be part of the team and be champions at saving their lives. You can also let the other players subtract a failure by using another one of their proficiencies to try to undo a failure that one of their fellows has made. Maybe the rogue has a method for using stealth to slip past some sharks, but he fails the stealth roll. And then perhaps your fighter comes along and punches the shark in the nose, scaring it off, and we can undo that failure. This is at the Dungeon Master's discretion, of course. And once you acquire the 5 successes that you need, narrate the whole thing through like it's this dramatic chase scene. And that's really the point of these skill challenges. When you have a big chase, when you have the castle is collapsing at the end of the story, when you're coming after when you're chasing after the villain, skill challenges can be a whole lot of fun for making these chase sequences come to life and make it more fun, make it more like a cinematic, exciting chase scene instead of, you moved 5 grid spaces closer to shore. Oh, that's boring. Always make your story interesting. If there's one crime in Dungeons & Dragons, it's being boring. Once your players make it to the shore of Isla Mortalis, they realize the coastline has a small skirmish going on right now. It appears there are 4 prisoners battling 8 different skeletons, and the prisoners aren't doing that well. Your players are wearing little more than rags. They don't have weapons, they don't have armor, but do let them use some improvised weapons. There should be driftwood and rocks on the beach that they can pick up and use as improvised weapons, so some of the skeletons break off from attacking the prisoners and start to attack them. Skeletons are fairly flimsy, and your players shouldn't have that much trouble defeating them. But as fast as your players are taking down the skeletons, the other skeletons are taking down the other prisoners. As the Dungeon Master, make sure that the prisoners are dropping like flies faster than the rate that your players are taking down their skeletons. You can just do this with narration. When the last prisoner dies, or perhaps when your players kill the last skeleton and rush to the help of the other prisoners, he has a blue tattoo down the side of his face, making him very distinctive. We'll come back to him in a future video and explain why we need to remember who he is. And he says, "Kill Kiva, break Kiva's staff to save me." See, he knows he's dying, and yet he's still asking you to save him and break Kiva's staff. And then he falls to his own death at the hands of the skeleton. Your players wipe out the last of the skeletons, and now they have a pile of skeletons and prisoners. They're able to pick through this and find some base level armor and weapons to get them started. Players are left with this question though. Who is Kiva? Why does his staff need to be broken? When they look to the east, down the coastline, they can see the prison they were headed for. If they look to the west, the land rises up a steep grade where there's a black keep at the top. They can also head straight out into the wilderness, although they hear the yip of goblins, and the wilderness doesn't seem to offer them any refuge at all. Will they go to the keep? Will they go to the wilderness? Will they go to the prison? You can decide what happens next, or you can watch part 2, where I've got some more information on what happens on Isla Mortalis. Part 2 will give you some more of the plot points that happen on Isla Mortalis. We'll start to learn the role of the necromancer, the identity of the mysterious lady in red hair with the copper bracelets, what's going on in the prison, and why people are there in the first place. Why does the bone kraken guard the shore from other people coming to visit the island? Hope you enjoyed this D&D starter story. If you like it, by all means, give us a thumbs up. Also, to pay homage to the YouTube gods, you must click the subscribe button and the little bell icon so you'll be notified when part 2 comes out, if it's not out already. I'll put a link to Matt Colville's skill challenge video down here in the comments as well if you want to give him a look. He's a really fun dungeon master. He's got a neat book out also. I like to pimp my own book. I've got books at briancarrybooks.com. I've got a link to that, and that'll help support the show. Matt's got his own books out, and again, he's a wonderful dungeon master. Part 2 of this video should be right over here someplace. Give that a click, and hopefully you love part 2 as much as you love part 1. Leave me comments. You can follow me on social media. Let me know what you think. This is Brian Carey reminding you to be a scholar and a barbarian.